Hello friends, and welcome to another exciting tutorial. Today we're going to be taking a look at how to create this unique layout, the Editor X website. But what we're going to be focusing is on just this aspect, okay? This first section where you have this nice scroll effect. You see that? All right, so when I saw this, I was really impressed. I really liked it. It was captivating, and I thought, okay, it would be nice to try this out. There are a couple of things I would like you to notice about this website. The first thing I would like you to notice is that they are using fluid typography, as you can see. And then generally, the layout generally is fluid. So you can see that everything just scales according to, the viewport width, and even objects that are, positioned, I would say absolutely, they are scaled the same way. So we're going to go ahead and start our layout. I'm going to be using Automatic.css for this because it's just going to make it a lot easier, to set up the responsive typography and some of the sizings and spacing. Okay, so let me jump into Oxygen. I'm going to start the initial setup. The first thing is to enter Oxygen and go to Settings, Global Styles. Want to first of all go to the width and breakpoint. Now you see this is a pretty wide website, so I'm going to set this to 1800. And then I'm not going to bother with all this, but typically I usually set this to 125 and set this to 801 in most of my website. This is usually my settings. But and then I'm going to go to the headings and clear out these settings. I'm just going to clear it up to H4. I don't expect to go that far anyway. And then what else? The next thing is the sections. So I'm going to clear all this out, and so I can let acss do the rest. So that's it. I'm going to save it, and then I'm going to jump back to the back end and go to acss. I'm going to set up my first. I'm going to set up the color. I think I already have this. This is not really a color driven website, so I just set that and that color, okay, that primary color. And I'm going to go into the typography. This is where I'm going to do my settings. The root font size is perfect. This makes you this gives us a scale of 10 pixels to 1 rem, which makes it very easy. The base desktop size, the base text size, which is the size of the font for the desktop. Now we're going to take a look at what they are using here, and I'm going to check theirs and go to computed. Now if you take a look at their font size, you see that everything is calculated here, so we can't really know the font size to set. So you're going to go to the the computed. I'm just going to look for the font size, and I can see that this font size is 32 pixels. And if I go to responsive design, you can see that as the window scales down, the viewport scales down, the font size is scaling all the way down. And so that gives me an idea of the font size I'm supposed to use, for my base desktop font size. So I'm going to go back to acss. I'm going to put that as 32. And then I don't ever want my mobile font size to go below 16 for accessibility reasons. And then I'm going to go all the way down to where you have the headings. So the H1, I'm going to go back to the website, this Editor X website, and I can see that the font size, the initial font size is 90 pixels. And then that is easy to know in rems, which is 9. And that's the largest size you want, okay, on the desktop. And then for the mobile device, what's the smallest? You want the H1 to be on mobile. So I'm just going to quickly just check this responsive and check for maybe iPhone 12. And you could see that that font size, that H1 font size, what they have here is 33. So let me select that to be sure. So you have 33. So I'm going to set my own to 32. Which will be 3.2. See, this is why the scale of 10 pixels to 1 rem is very, very easy to use. So that is it for mobile. Then the H2, I'm going to go ahead and check the smallest for H2 while I'm at it. Okay. So we have the smallest for H2 being 25. So 25 to, let's check the biggest, 64 to 25. So for the H2, I'm going to say 6.4 to I'm going to make mine 2.4. Okay, and that's basically it. I think those are the two headings we're going to be dealing with. Okay, so I assume my button text is going to be, okay, the button text is 20. I'm not sure if CSS has, I'm going to save this for now. I'm not sure if they have a text size for buttons, but let me check if they have font size for button. May not be necessary because normally the font should take the font size of the base, text font size. So probably not, and I wouldn't think that is necessary either. Okay, what next? I think my mouse is messing up. What next? Let's take a look at this. So I think that's basically all we have to set up here in ACS for this particular build that we want to do. So I'm going to go into the build. No, we've forgotten one thing, the breakpoints. So we have a maximum of 1,800 and a minimum of 520. So we're going to go to the viewport and then change this to 1,800. And this is going to be 1025, 801. And according to mine, so you have to set it according to these your own values. I'm going to save viewport, the minimum viewport width. I think this is basically okay, the minimum device you want to optimize your website for. If you're not sure, leave it at default. So I think we should leave this at default. So that is okay. I'm not sure why this changed, but it doesn't really matter. I'm going to save this. And I think I might just have to save my Oxygen and refresh it, not just so the changes probably will take effect in the editor. I'm not quite sure if that's necessary. Anyway, so let's take a look at this. Now, when I thought of building this, doing this tutorial, there are two ways I would have, I thought of approaching it. First is to do it step by step. Step one, do this. Step two, do this. And so you just be following me like a zombie, without knowing why I'm doing what I'm doing. And then that is going to make this video much shorter. But I thought that will not help you. It's just going to be a showcase of what I can do, and which is really, really not the way to go. So now the other way is for me to break down why you should do what you're doing, so that if you're to go on another project and you have a similar challenge, you will understand exactly what to do. Now let's take a look at this. We're going to start building, and then, but before we build, let's analyze this. So we see that we have this section that scrolls, and then we have this part that stops. Okay, this stops, and then the remaining go up. And immediately, if you understand layout techniques, you would know that this is a sticky component, because at some point it moves along. You see, now I have a video on, mastering layout techniques. The part 2 of that deals with this sticky components. So if you want to check it out, you could check it out. I'm going to link it at the top right corner of the screen. So now, so you see this second one comes in and pushes the other thing up, and that's it. Now, if you understand anything about sticky position, you would know that the sticky element would need enough scrolling height from the parent for it to stay sticky. That means that the whole of this section and the whole of this section, they share the same parent. That is why it is possible for this to stick and this two scrolls up to it. And once the parent, the bottom, okay, once the sticky element hits the bottom of the parent, it begins to move. So that is what you have to know. So we have to make this section and this section, this second section, have the same parent. So I'm going to go into Oxygen. We'll start building from the first. I'm going to add a section first. I like seeing my structure panel, and that is going to take care of this top part. So in that section, I'm going to add a div. Now that div is going to be the parent for these two, and it's going to be, I want to make it a grid. So, but first of all, I'm going to make it a full width. So I'm going to use a width of full. I'm going to make it a grid 2. Okay. Did I add that? So grid 2 is going to give me a 2. I'm not quite sure if this full was necessary once you want to make it a grid 2. So I think you don't need it. Automatically makes it a full width. And then I want to, as I go along, I want to build this responsively as I move along. So probably this is still good enough for 2. Okay, so probably at this, which is supposed to be the medium. So you have for ACSS, what they have is this is XXL, extra large, that this is the extra large, then this is extra large, then this is a large and medium and small. So that's what they do. So at the medium screen size, I want this grid medium to be 1. So I want it to be this grid M1. So it's going to be one, one column. So I think that takes care of it. And then I'm going to drop a div inside here. And I'm just going to duplicate that div. I really don't think there's any need to give that div a class, because it's not going to be a repeated component. You might think, what about the header? Okay, so let me mention, we are not going to do the header. These are very basic things. This is what we're going to be focusing on, because this is going to take a lot of time. So for the header, I'm just going to add a section, and let me move that section up, and I'm just going to go in there and size and spacing and make sure it's 0, and I'm going to drop an image there, and I already have a screenshot of that header, just so we can have the structure, so I just put that there. So we're not actually designing the header, I'm just putting it there so that it gives us kind of a structure. And now what I'm going to do to this section, because we want everything to be inside a div now, because you see all these, I want all of this to be inside one div, everything including the section. So I'm going to wrap this with a div, and then I'm going to set that div's background to black. So now, and you will get to understand why I did that. Now, so I have everything in a div, and then I have these two sections. So I'm going to drop an H1 here. So let me quickly drop a heading 1. One of the things how I did not do is to set up my typography, which I'm going to go to my font. I want to set my fonts to Poppins, because it's closer to what they are using, even though they are not using Poppins. So it looks closer. And my H1, I want it to be white. So I'm going to just give it, let me just give it a class editor X H1, and then I'm just going to make it white. And then I'm going to drop, let me just quickly copy that. So it's really thick. So where I'm going to change that, I'm going to go to the global setting again, and then I'm going to change my H1 weight. So this, change it to 600 is not, okay, so 400 it is, and then that means I'm going to make my H2 400 and this 400 too. So I'm going to save that, and the next thing I'm going to do is to add, let's check our line height. Is it okay? My line height, I want it to be 1.5, and I think that should be the same as this. Yeah, this and this. I think I'll make this 1.3 and this 1.3. That can always be adjusted later. I'm going to add a text here. So I'm just going to add body text, and that did not give me the size of the text I expected. Now that's because I did not clear this out. See, so I didn't clear that out. I want this to be about 1.4, I think, or let's leave it at that 1.6. We can always adjust it later. And then I'm gonna give it a class editor X body, and I want to give that white. So I'm gonna copy this, and then I'm gonna paste it. Okay, let's see. Now I want this to center. Now typically when I'm using acss, I don't put on the classes. I just use it to create my own classes. So let me see. Center, is there anything like that? Oh, not that one. So let me see the center. Okay, so to have an idea, this one thing when you're working with frameworks, okay, you will not remember everything. So so if you go to the Oxygen's I can't. If you go to the Oxygen's settings, so let's go to editor settings. Now I want to increase my class suggestions to 20 so that when I type, I can have everything, like that. So if I select one, let's see. So this is for the section which has center, right? So center top. Did I see that? Center top. Okay. So that gives me what I want, center top. And I'm going to add a button. So we have this div. Inside this div, I'm going to add a button. So let me see that. So I'm going to create a primary white, okay, a primary button, or let's say btn primary white. So I'm going to call that primary white, and then I'm just going to give it a white background. The text color, I'm going to give it that black, like that. And then I'm going to go into the size and spacing, and then the padding. I think I would like to give it a var space L. Okay, this is Oxygen 4.0. It's a pity that when you type var space something, it doesn't automatically remove this, but it expands when you choose N. Okay, it expands, which is good. And then for the top, I think I'm okay with the top, and then I'm going to go to the border and just make it 100%, 100 viewport width. Okay, so 100 VW ensures that no matter what happens, that button stays rounded like that. And then I'm going to just copy this, or just type start creating, and it appears the button text is much smaller than the body text. So let me take a look at the button text. Computed font size is 20 pixels. So I'm gonna just give it font size of text size of 2 rem. Okay. It's kind of bold, so font weight is gonna give it that. And the top and bottom padding, I think we need to do something about that too. So I'm just going to copy this here, and it's too much, so I'm going to give it a medium. Medium. How small is it? I think medium is still small. All right, I'll give that small. Okay, I think that does it. And for this one, I'm just going to drop an owl medium there. Yep. Do we need large? I think we need large. So, okay, good. And for this grid, I think I may have forgotten to add a gap. Okay, I'm just gonna add a gap medium to it. Nope, I think we really need a big gap. So I'm gonna give a gap extra large. Okay, I think that should be enough. And okay, so this would need a maximum width. So max width so with max width large medium. Okay, I think medium should be okay. I think that works well. So let me save this. Now if you take, oh, I didn't say start creating, so I'm gonna write start creating. Now I don't want to be, to remember to type the capital, so I'm just gonna go into the typography and change it to capitalize, so that works. Now, but if you go to the mobile breakpoints, you're gonna see that while you have start creating, but once you go down, you see start now. And now the first instinct that you might have is, when you see something like that, is to think of creating 2 buttons and hiding one, but you really don't need to do that. So you can actually say start creating now, and then you're going to select this, the now, and make it a span, and then you're going to select that creating also and make it a span. Now for this, I'm going to hide that span for the bigger breakpoints, and then when we get down to this breakpoint, I'm going to display it flex, and then I'm going to hide the creating at that breakpoint. But now you see that is breaking it into 2 lines, so I'm going to go back and set it to display inline flex. So that is going to correct that. So you see right here we have start creating, and here we have start now. I think that works well. So I'm going to save that, and I think we're basically done with this section, but we have a very large padding at the top here. So I'm going to go into that, I think the section, yep, and give it a bigger padding. So I'm just gonna give it a padding of, say, var space XXL, and then let me take this off. It's really not doing much. Okay, now when you hit a point like that, when you're using a framework like this, you can augment for it by giving it calculating it and multiplying that by let's say increase it by 50% or increase it by 80%. Now why this is important is, now let me take this off. Now you may be tempted to say, oh, yeah, the maximum they have is XXL, and then it's not big enough for me, so let me just go and add maybe 150 pixel or 200 pixel by myself. But the problem with that is you don't get the responsiveness, you don't get the advantage of the fluid values. So instead of doing that, so you just use a multiplier, and you still get the advantage of it being fluid as you go down the breakpoint, or else you end up with a very large. So just imagine that this was, say, 200 pixel. Okay, so you see, imagine that was 200 pixel. That would be really, really big on that breakpoint. So you don't need that. So all you need to do is take advantage of that fluid. So now, we have that. I'm going to save that. The bottom, I think the bottom should be fine. If we need to do something, we're going to do it. Let's move on to the next section. So this is this section is going to be our first section. Okay, section 1, and then we're going to move to the second one, which is this. So let me bring this all the way down here. Now to build this, we really need to be careful how we're going to do it. So we need a div that is going to be a parent to all of this. So I'm going to add that div. Now I'm going to add that div to this. This is the overall wrapper. Okay, I'm going to add it there. So I'm just going to drop in a div. Then I want it to be full width. So width full, and then this is going to be like, I'm just going to call it section 2. Sticky parent. Okay, and so I'm gonna start. So I'm just gonna start dropping in these elements. So we're gonna add it in this order. So this is gonna be the first one, then this is gonna be the second one, this is gonna be the third one, this the fourth, and this the fifth. So I'm gonna drop in for the first one. What I'm going to do is I'm not gonna use the image element like that. I'm gonna wrap them. So if I'm dropping an image, so the first image, I'm going to select, that first image. So let me see, which one is that? Blah, blah, this has that. Okay. Can I tell? Yeah, I think that's it. I'm going to drop that one. But I don't want to drop that image just like that. I want to wrap that image with a div. And the reason is, I mean, there's a lot of possibilities of wrapping these images with a div. So, you can do something with it much later, and you would need that image to have a wrapper. So as a failsafe, it's always important to wrap that image with a div. I'm going to give it a class. I'm going to just say graph image. That's the class I'm giving to it. And you can see, so all the images that looks like have this graph stuff, like, you know, it looks like a graph, they're going to have that class. The reason is because those images are going to be taken away at the lower breakpoint. So at the lower breakpoint, you're not going to see them again. So I need to be able to control all of them at once. So so let me just call this, instead of calling it image wrap, let me just call it image 1, and then I'm going to duplicate that and call this image 2. And then that image 2 is really going to be our sticky image. So image 2 sticky. Okay, and then that will not need that class, but I want this to be I want this to be stacked horizontally. Now for a layout like this, you really want to use Flexbox for it because using grid for this is going to be very, very tricky. So you're going to use Flexbox for something like this. For this one, so image to sticky, I'm going to just I'm going to go and select that. Okay, so that is that image, and I'm going to duplicate it again, and then I'm going to call this image 3, not sticky. And this one is going to have this one that scrolls past it. So that should be easy to find. And I'm also going to add another one. So I'm going to duplicate, let me duplicate this graph and bring it all the way down. It's not staying. All right. And call it image 4. And for that, we're having this has this and cross there, so yep, not there, not yeah, that is it. And I'm going to duplicate this again and call this image 5, and that should be this one that has learn more on it. So you see we have all our images, so let's select the parent and just make all of them to align to the bottom. And what I want to do is to stretch just space between. Now, what is going to happen now? We're going to select the sticky element, and then we're going to set the position to sticky. So I'm going to go to custom CSS. I'm going to set the position to sticky. And of course, we're going to add, let's add something else. So I'm going to add another div. Now, remember I said that the first section and the second, this first part and this second part has to be the same parent. So I'm going to add another div, still there. And then I'm going to make that, that is supposed to be 100% width. So let me just type in that 100%. Now, I'm going to select this and I'm going to click allow multi-line. So that is going to allow this second section to move to the next line. And problem is everything just scatters. So everything scatters. So if I go to the parent, if we remove this, you see this moves in, but we need that to be there. So now this one is not a sticky element. So this, for it to align with this, it has to be absolutely positioned. So I'm going to go into layout, and then I'm going to set the position to absolute. But for that to, stay where it's supposed to stay, I have to make sure that the parent is set to relative. Okay. Yep. So the not sticky has a position of absolute, and let's see, initially we're going to set the top to 0 so it aligns. We also need to set the right. Let me just arbitrarily just select a value and see what value would we put to get it there. Now if I make this full screen, you can see that that position it's not retained. It moves in. It moves in. So that position is not adjusting accordingly. So we have to do something about that. So we see we have these 3 images. I mean, these all this 1, 2, 3, 4 in a straight line. Okay, and we have this. So let's just save this and go to the front end and take a look at what is going to happen. So yeah, this is our build. Okay. Almost fooled you, right? It looks similar to this. Okay, so I'm going to go into a responsive mode, and we're going to see what is going to happen here. Let me move this down. So we have this where as we reduce the viewport width, Now these images remains the same size. They don't scale along, and that is because we chose the option of flex wrap. But we need that flex wrap, okay? We need it. But if you take a look at this, so what happens here is if we scale this, you see the images scale, the spaces are remain consistent, the scale, everything scales. But in our own case, if we scale this, you see the images remain the same size and start breaking away. So why do we have that problem? Now, so the reason we're having this problem is because these images are not scaling according to the viewport width. They are not responding to the viewport width. So we need a situation where we manually set the width of these images according to the percent of the viewport width. So we're going to calculate the percent of the viewport width. So let's look at the original website. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, I want to determine the viewport width. So I'm going to go to layout, and then I'm going to check here. So you can see that this is 1903. That's the total viewport width is 1903. It could differ on your system, but the most important thing is this 1903 forms the baseline of everything we're going to do. And you have to notice that this doesn't take into account the paddings and the margins. So that means that any elements that you want to use to reference this size must not have paddings and margins. Otherwise, it's going to throw off any other dependent elements. For instance, you see that this div, this second section will be inside another div. Now, if that div has, say, a padding, it's going to throw it off. So it's going to have, let's say this has 100 and 100, or let's say 50-50. Now the overall width is now going to be like 2003. Now, if you set elements on the top, which was based on 1903 to scale according to 1903, the second element, which is in a container that is 2003, is not going to keep in sync with it. So if you look at this, you can see that even the second element, which is this second image that scrolls in here, scales along with the image that is in the first section. Now, if the parent of this second image has a different width from the parent of this first section, as you're scaling it, it's going to scale at a different rate, and it's going to throw it off the layout. So that is very important to take note of. So we're going to go in now. No, we're not going in yet. So we're going to check. So we've checked for the size for this. So let's determine what's the size for this one. Now the size for that, let's get that element. So we want to make sure you get the real parent of that element. So you see it's 257.68. So I'm going to take out my calculator, and then I'm going to say 257.68 divided by 1903. Now I'm going to multiply that by 100, and that's going to give me the width in percent that I'm going to use for that. So I'm going to take 13.5% for the width of that first one. So I'm not going to put it on the class, I'm going to put it on the ID. So I'm going to give it a width of, sorry, I thought I copied that. The calculator said 13.5. So I could just make it 13.54%. So I've given that width, but the images should all be 100%. Yeah, width. So I'm going to go in, and anyway, I already had I have a class here. So instead of doing that, probably I should just use the style sheet to do it. So I'll target all the images inside this graph image. Maybe. Okay, maybe I should do that. Or should I? Okay, let me just give that, since it's just a few of them. So I'm going to give it a width of 100%. So I need it to fill up the parent. So I'm going to do the same here, width of 100%. So the image inside the div, because we're applying that that percentage width to the image wrapper. So I'm going to go to the second one, which is a sticky image, and that is going to be let's go to the editor X. That's going to be this one. So I'm going to take that, which is, you can see that that is the whole image, the whole size of that. The yellow part represents, as you can see, the yellow part represents margins. Okay, so I'm going to select this, and then I can see that it's 954.43. Go back to my calculator. 954.43 divided by 1903. So I'm going to times that by 100. So that's going to give me 50.15. I'm going to go back here and give it a width of 50.15%. And the next one, which is, let me close my front end. The next one, which is this. So what I'm doing, I make sure I select the overall parent, which is this div. And that is 745.66. So I'm just going to do the same, 745.66 divided by 1903 times 100. And that gives me 39.18. So I'm just going to approximate that to 39.2. So that is this, the not sticky. So what did we have? 39.18. So I'm just going to make it 39 point. Let's just make it 0.18, just exactly the way it is. I'm going to give it a percentage. And then the image 4, we're going to do the same thing. So I have that with 349.88. I mean, I could just round it off to 350, but let me just stick to. So that should be 18.3%. Okay. I mean, I don't have to always do times 100. I should be able to take a look at that and know it's going to be 18.38. So that one with 18.38%. Yep. And then this one is going to be 384. That's the 384. Let's see. 380. Oh, it's not 384. Sorry. So that is yeah, 304. That's 04. I thought it was 304.26. So 304.26 divided by that. So that's going to give me 15.98. So that gives me the last one. Oh, no wonder. I put that on the class. Cut that. No wonder everything shifted that way. So I'm going to do that. Put it back here. And then, not on the last one. Anyway, what was the last one? 15.98. So let me just quickly just drop that. 15.98. And this one is supposed to be 18.98%. Then this image, I didn't set that image to 100% width. I didn't. All right. And this one, did I set it to 100% width? Okay. So everything looks set. Now let's save it and check it out and see if we're going to have that responsiveness. So if I don't even need to bring this up. So you can see that everything scales according to the viewport width. See how it scales? Perfect. The scaling is perfect. But you can see that this left side is not scaling the way it's supposed to scale. So I'm going to go back there and then I'm going to check for the space that I have there. And that space is 200. This is a margin, but we're not going to use margin. We're going to use, since we're using this absolutely positioning element, we're just going to use the left. So this is a margin of 227. Okay, so I'm going to go 227 divided by that. That's going to give me 11.92%. So I'm going to go to that not sticky image, and I'm going to go into that layout and give it 11.92%. Was that what we got? 11.92%. Yeah. Now yeah, so that is now you might wonder why is it looking like that, and that is because this image is not showing in full. You can see this image, this one is not showing in full. It has a negative margin of negative 89.2 negative margin, and also has a negative margin of 59. So we're gonna go, let's check here, and that is gonna be the result we're gonna get is gonna be in the negative. So negative 89.2 divided by, so we're gonna have a negative yep, I think that should be 4. Let's times that by 100. Negative 4.68. Okay, I'm gonna copy that and go to that image 1 and go to the margin, and I'm just gonna paste that. So it's negative. So you can see this aligns, but this also needs to go down, also needs to go under, like, you know, like that. So the under is negative 59.4, negative 59.4 divided by 1903. So we have negative 3.12. Okay, so I'm just gonna copy that, and here I'm just gonna drop that so it goes under. I'm gonna save that. Now this image has to have a top, you know, the top has, so we have this image position absolutely, so we need to give it an offset from the top. Let's take a look at this and see if we can garner anything from there. Now for this one, we don't have a top value, so we have to, I think we have to manually set our top, probably because of the method that they use, because I can assure you that they are not using the same method I'm using. You know, guess what? It's Wix. So Wix allows you to move stuff manually and place them, and then Wix is gonna figure out how to place them for you. So they are not actually using any of this method I'm using. They're probably using some weird margins, placement, and all that. So I'm gonna go back in there, and then based on percentage, I'm just gonna eyeball this that value of the top. So I'm just gonna move this to %, and then I'm going to just put that maybe there. Now, so whatever you put in percentage will scale accordingly. Now let's just check this out and see if that top value is going to scale properly. So this, let me refresh. Did I refresh? Yeah, I did. Okay, so now let's see. Okay, so the top value is scaling properly, but yeah, nothing, no problem. Everything is scaling properly. Good, good. Okay. The next is to you know, take a look at the second part. Now that second part, I already have a div, and then I'm gonna call this div. I'm just gonna call it row under sticky. This is the row under the sticky element. And I'm just going to give it a background for now. I'm going to give it a black background so we can differentiate it. And what happens to that div? We have, we're going to have two divs. We're going to have two divs. One is going to hold this image and one is going to hold this. So, okay. And yeah, let's do that. So I'm going to drop in the first div. Oh yeah, see, I went to press a shortcut. I thought I was using hydrogen pack. I'm going to drop in the first div. I'm just going to call it image. Image push sticky. So that's the one that's going to push the sticky, and then I'm going to drop an image inside it. And I'm going to select that image. Yeah, that's the image. I'm going to select that image, and I'm going to make it 100% width. Now, but we need that image to, we need it to move, you know, under this. But before that, let me just add the other div. Just call this content, and I want this row to be I want it to be grid, so I'm just gonna give it grid, grid 2. I'm gonna give it a gap of probably a large gap, and I'm gonna give it I want it to be on the medium, grid medium. I want it to be 1. So if I come all the way here, so you see it's 1 is breaking. Now for this, at this M breakpoint, yeah, I guess at that M breakpoint, now what point do they collapse? No, for weeks. Let's see at what point do they collapse. So at 10s, yeah, so at the medium, it collapses at the medium. All right, so let's go there. So we would collapse at medium also. So at medium, I don't want to see these graph images. And at medium, what do they do here also? At medium, we don't have that sticky effect anymore. So because at medium we don't have that sticky effect, this particular image, which is the sticky, is going to be a width of 100%. And this one that is not sticky is going to be a width of 100% also. But we're going to reset the top value is absolute, so we're going to make this 0, and we're going to make this 0 or not. Probably not going to make that 0. Probably going to just, let's see how it looks. So we're going to just put it in there somewhere. So, and then the width, did we change that? I changed the width to 100, which is not. So that width is going to be something like that, and then the top is going to be, so you can actually use percentage to, you know, to eyeball it, and it would size. So let's see what is really going on here. When I added the bottom, so this shifted. So why did it shift? So I'm gonna adjust that accordingly. So let's say 5. Okay, let me save that and refresh. So we still have, yep, we still have a scale. Okay, so now let's take a look at how much value this is pushed by. So okay, so we see the margin is 123.95. I'm just going to round that off to 120. Sorry, did I say 120? 213.95. I'm going to round that off to 214 divided by 1903. So that's going to give me 11.24%. Just go there and give it a margin of that percentage. So I'm going to change this to percent. Sorry. I pasted what I had before, 11.2. So 11.24%. And that doesn't seem to be doing the deed. Okay. In. I'm going to push that in. Then for, I'm just going to, I need to get this image. I can't get that image. So I can't get this image. So I need to improvise, just make mine, just, you know, make mine the same as this one, maybe a little smaller. So this is 39.1. So I'll put it there. Why? Now that's because the width is not relative. Now if I take out that, let me see, if I take out that grid, okay, so the grid, having that grid automatically affects the way this works. So let me return that grid. So it positions this element relative. So we're not going to use the grid because the grid is not going to allow us to do what we want to do. So I'm going to remove the grid from the parent, and for this one we are not going to use the grid. Okay, for this one we're going to use flex. So we're gonna do that, and then now you can see that my margin, which was 11.24, okay, let's see, matches up. So so I can just make it just 12 to push it in a little bit, and then my width, which was 39.8, because yeah, that matches up nicely. Let's see, yeah, I think that 11 was okay. Instead of saying 11.24, I could just make it 5.8 is more like it. So yeah, so I have that, and for this parent, this row, I'm just going to give it a gap. The gap will be var xl, var space, oh my keyboard, space xl. So that's going to give me my gap, and of course I'm going to have a margin at the top, I mean a padding at the top, because we need it to see, we need that the separation, see this separation, and that is because of this, they have a lot of padding at the top there. I don't think I can get that padding, but I'm going to just eyeball it. I'm going to go to, and we really still have to use percent, so I'm just going to say 10%. Okay, that doesn't seem to be big enough. 15% looks like it. Now we still don't have a scrolling effect. Anybody knows why? Let's see. So I'm going to save this. So we don't have a scrolling effect because this is not sticky. It's not sticky. So why is it not sticky? Oh, the reason it is not sticky is because we don't have our top. So now that we have our top, it's supposed to be sticky. So when it gets to the top, it should stay. So let's see. I'm going to calculate this. Sorry, refresh this. All right, so it stays. So let's look at the Wix side. Now we can see that it stays, it doesn't, ours goes all the way to the top before it stays, but this stops somewhere here. Okay, it stops somewhere here. So we need to give that a top value, something, yeah, something like that. So let's see. So I'm going to give it a top of, let's say, maybe 10%. Okay. Yep. So it stays somewhere around there. Yeah, it's about that. So I'm going to save it. And then what I want to do is, we don't have enough, still have enough scrolling height to see what, so I'm just going to add a div, something here. So I'm just going to drop in, a div that is going to give us, I'm just going to call that scroll height. And I'm going to give it a height of 100% viewport height. So yeah, that gives us enough height to scroll. So now we can see if we are doing anything, if we are making any progress. So this stops, this goes, and continues. Thing is, it is under it. So I think I need to move this row under sticky and just give it a z index of, say, 5. Yeah, that will not work. Instead, I'm going to take this one, that one, okay, just that image, and give it a z index of 5. Good. Save that. Check out the front end. So you can see that this works beautifully. And if we check the responsive, like the scaling, you can see that our scaling is just, everything scales perfectly up till, yep, there. And at this breakpoint we need to do something here, but let's quickly put in this content. So we have advanced, we have a heading, text, and button. I'm going to quickly drop that in here. I'm going to drop a heading, which is going to be H2. I'm going to drop a text, which is the body. I'm going to drop a button. As a matter of fact, I'm just going to copy this button we already have here. Copy that and paste there. And I'm going to remove this button. And what do we have on the weak side? What we have is that button says, yeah, there's no button there. So it says start creating, but once it breaks, this moves up and this stays below, and you don't have the button. Rather, you see all that. Let's check. So you have just start now, and then you have these advanced design features with this. So see all design features. I'm not going to bother with these. These are very minor stuff. So I don't want to stretch this to be a tutorial to be too long. This is very simple. You can do this. I'm not doing that. So I'm going to make this white already. Editor X1, H2. I think I should have just given it the heading class. All headings has to be white, right? But let me just make this white and copy this advanced design features. And then the text body, I'm going to copy this. And I'm just going to drop the owl class there. I think that's good. And so we've already given this width. So we can't, this is 39%. And so this has more content. And the way Flexbox work is, the way it works is if you don't set, like we've given this 39%, but this wants to take up as much space as possible. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to this one and set the shrink, the flex shrink to 0. So we don't want it to shrink. We want it to stay at the same width that we gave it. But we need all this also to be pushed apart so that by the time this comes up, it doesn't interfere. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to set this apart so there's going to be space between, but we're also going to give this content a maximum width. So I'm going to just give it the class width, let's say M. But I'm going to leave it there for now, and then I want to see if it has any calculated value. So I'm going to refresh that. Okay, so this lines up, but doesn't give us much space as this, but I think I can use oh, my fonts are really big. I may have to adjust. The good thing about CSS is that you can just quickly go in and make a line do something quickly. And I believe the reason it's much bigger is because it's a different typeface, because different typefaces, you know, they display their fonts differently. So so for these, I'm gonna go in here and just give these a padding. So let me just say to rem should be good. How about 5? So let me try that. Okay, let's see the original site. So this is our site. I'm gonna check the responsive. Now the problem here is our width seems to be fixed, so we still have to give this content. Let's see what does width m do. What does it do? So the max width calculates in, yeah, it calculates 180 divided by, yep. So we need something to be in percent. So if I say times 1%, will that make any difference? No, not necessarily. Anyway, so that means we have to give it in percent. So I'm just going to give it that width of 33% and see what happens. So that 33% is going to allow it to scale accordingly. So that means we may have had a little bit too much of the padding in here. So I might just want to take off some of those padding. Let's see, how much do we really have? So probably we don't need any padding. So I'm just going to take off the padding. Okay, so I'm going to save that, and then I'm going to move to my lower breakpoint where everything should stack here, and I'm going to go to the parent and stack it vertically. So for this one, for the content, I'm going to take the width back to 100%. Okay, and yep, and then I'm also going to take this back to 100%, and I'm going to undo some of the things here, which was the margin, which is 0. So we decided that this was not going to be sticky again. So at this breakpoint, we don't want anything to be sticky. So for the sticky, I'm going to go in at that breakpoint and say position. Now why am I having this at every breakpoint? What is happening here? Anyway, at this breakpoint, I'm going to say position static, and then I'm going to take away the top. So that works. And then at these breakpoints, of course, we didn't have the button, but I'm going to allow it. Then the problem is, because these ones we didn't put it in a section. Now we didn't put it in a section, so we don't have these paddings at the lower breakpoint, these paddings that you see here. Now the reason we didn't put it in a section is, if we had this in a section, then we would still need to take off the paddings to be able to get this. Okay, so that is why I used the div. But the problem is now is, for this we would need that padding by the side, and then we can't add the padding. So normally, if I go into the parent and add, say, padding, okay, left and right, it's going to throw this off. Like I said in the beginning, this padding will account for the total width of the parent element of this. So every calculation based on percentage will not be in sync with the top one. So instead of using padding here, we're going to start from maybe a breakpoint, like say that, or from the beginning. What padding does, what's the padding of the typical, the typical section? So I'm just gonna go to computed and type, no, not computed, layout. Let's check for the padding. So this is the padding, this is the padding that I think that acss gives. And I'm just gonna copy the value. Unfortunately, you can't copy value here. I'm gonna copy that, and I'm gonna use it as my padding here. So I'm gonna go to this to these contents. I'm gonna use it as my left padding. Am I selecting the right thing? Yep. So let me be sure, because I'm not seeing any change. I'm gonna so all right, I'm gonna just put that as my left padding. Let's move. So it doesn't seem to be making any difference. Probably copied something wrong. Padding right. Okay, it's 3 rem. It uses 3 rem. It's just fixed. Okay, so that is why. So I'm just gonna put 3 rem. Okay, and by the time this breaks, I want to give this side 3 rem also. Okay, so that gives me what I want, but I don't want this. I don't know why we had this sort of alignment. Okay, and I really like the way the responsive typography works. acss handles it quite well. This works perfect. You can see how those typography scale. You can see how they scale. I mean, that's really good. So if I want to change that typography, maybe the body size was too much. So instead of using this, I can use 28. And then for the heading, let me just save that. And then for the heading, yeah, instead of using 90, I can take it down to maybe 80. And when you go to the front end, yep, everything just scales up nicely. So it's almost the same. You can see it's almost the same at this. So you can see we have that. So let's see what else. The next thing we can do is just to add these backgrounds. So I'm quickly going to add this background. So now to have these gradients, I'm going to go to the parent div, and I'm going to go to gradient background, all the way to the gradients. Now I already had a background, so I'm going to take that background off. I want to use gradients, and I'm going to add 2 colors. The first one, I'm going to make it like purple. Yeah, something like that. And then I'm going to make this black. I want to choose radial, and I want to choose circle. Okay, so I already have something like that, and then I want this to be like 30%, and then this can be like 70%. So I have that. So I'm going to give the left 100%, so it moves it here. So that color is sort of not the kind of color that I would like. It's too vibrant. Let me just put in, yeah, something like that. Yep, so that's kind of, not exactly. Something like that. And then for the second part, which is this, I'm also going to give it, so for that one, I think this row under sticky. So I'm going to go to background. I already gave it a background. I'm going to take that out, and then I'm going to go to gradients, 2 colors. I'm just going to put in a color there, and then I'm going to put black here. I'm going to make this 20%. I'm going to make this 50%. I'm going to change it to radial, and I'm going to move this, this all the way here by pushing it 100% to this. I want to make it a circle rather, not radial. And the top, I want it to come down. So the top, I want to make the top 0. So rather, not come down, go up, because it's up. Yeah, so that adds that gradient. So let's refresh. So we see we have that gradient. And then for this dot 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 stuff is an image which I have managed to download. And for that one, I'm going to collapse everything. I'm going to select this overall div, and then I want to place a background texture, that texture there. So I'm going to add a div. Okay, so I think I would like to put that before the scroll height. I'm just going to call it background texture. And I think for that, I'm going to position it absolutely. So I'm going to go to advanced layout, position, absolute, and then I'm going to give top, left, all that. I'm going to give it 0, and I'm going to drop an image there, and that image is going to be us. No, not an image. What am I thinking? I'm going to give it a background image, and that is going to be the texture. So you see that shows up. Then I think I'm by default is set to repeat, so I think I'm okay with that. So it's giving that giving you that texture. Okay, let's save this and see how it looks at the front end. So that texture comes in and covers everything, and you can't do anything with it. So the first thing I would like to do to it would be to give it a z index of 0. Okay, and for this one, I think I'd like to give it a z. Let's see the original site, so it's behind. For this one, I think I'd like to give it a z index of the whole of this section 1. This I'm going to give it a z index of maybe 5. So yeah, save that. So yeah, so this and this other one, this section 1, this div, I think I'm going to also give it a z index of 5. But another way I could do that is to change the pointer events of that element to none, and that is going to take care of all the z-index issues. So if I go to this background texture and go to the custom CSS and say pointer events none, that should right now we can't select the text, or maybe we can't even click the button. So if I put pointer events none, that should let me refresh. That should allow me to select the text, but the button is still on top of it. So I'll still need to go into this and give it a z-index of 5 also. Save that and refresh. Yep. So let's go to the front end and check. So you can see that this stops somewhere here. Let's see that absolutely positioned div. Yep. So it's stopping somewhere there, and we've given it a height of top, bottom. So why is it stopping there? So I'm gonna set this. Now we had this relative, okay? We had this absolute. So I'm gonna set this parent, the main parent, to relative. because right now it's absolute relative to the viewport, so I want it to be absolute relative to the parent. So I'm going to go to layout and set this to be relative. Okay, so let me save that. So we have the original site. Of course, my colors are different. Yeah, I can't get the right colors. We have this. And also, I haven't gotten that texture to show up at the second one either. But I guess that's that for now. I don't want to, I could, I'll figure out why I can do that, but I don't want to spend so much time trying to figure out how to put that texture there. So I'm quickly going to copy for this scroll height. I just want to, the next section, I want to give it the same texture, background texture for this. So let me check. So we're going to have that same one. I'm going to put it on the scroll height, so it was going to give me the same, similar, just a continuation. That was 20%. This was black. This was 50. And it was radial circle 100 and top. And the scroll height width was 100%. And yep, I'm going to move this background a little bit further up. The top, I'm gonna make it like 50, not 50, negative 50, negative 50, negative 50. Maybe we need something a little bit like negative 60. Let's see. Anyway, that blends in a little bit, so you can fine-tune that, and that's it. Let's check the responsive. You can see. Okay, so we have a problem here. We have a problem here where, when it is like this, it moves, but when we move it closer, so that top doesn't do well. So the problem is this. Now, when you look at the original site, you have to make sure that this always aligns to the bottom of this. Otherwise, you're going to have a problem. So what we can do is we're going to select the parent and make sure that, that is always at the bottom. Yep. So that gives us what we need. So I'm going to refresh that. So you see that is always at the bottom. So we align it to the bottom. So I'm going to delete this. So if you scroll all the way up, so even if so everything aligns to the bottom. And of course, we can further reduce this text just like they have done, here. So at their own, they really brought the text down some more. So maybe at this breakpoint, what we can do is at this breakpoint, this 1.8, we could just make adjustment to this typography and make it a bit smaller. Like this one can have a, we can give the body var text s, which according to our setting, it's now it is much bigger than what, so I'm gonna just use calc and just reduce that by just a few percent, maybe. Yep, I think that's fine. Maybe by 9%, by 20%. And if I do the same for the H2, So this is a very complicated layout. So for this, I'm just gonna do var text medium. Maybe medium is not okay. Large. So I'm gonna use large there. So this is how it was, but I think I would maybe want it to just slightly bigger. So I'm just going to increase it by 20%. So I'm going to multiply it by 1.2. So if we don't have that, if we have that, so even if, yep, so if I take that off and put it back, so even if we have a smaller font size at that breakpoint, we still have the advantage of the, you know, fluid. So I'm gonna save that, and I'm gonna refresh. So you see, everything works out well. Now we didn't apply that, you know, here, but you can see. So everything works out. Now I think we have a much smaller for theirs. If they get to this like 900, it breaks. But ours goes all the way down to 800. So I mean, we could quickly solve that by changing breakpoint maybe to 9. So what does that do? 9. So 1000. So that's what they are using. So they're using 1000 here. So probably we should have used our M. Okay, we should have done a breakpoint here. Okay, so but we did it here. So if I change this to say 1000 and make this just a little, just probably leave that, you know, let's assume that this was 1000. Okay, so if I refresh, so we're gonna have this. Okay, I need to regenerate CSS, so I'm gonna go to settings, Oxygen settings, and regenerate CSS. I also have to go into acss and, you know, update that viewport. So everything's done, so I can refresh. So yeah, so you can see at that 1000 it breaks, so it doesn't have to go all the way down. So we forgot one important thing, which was we had to move this to the top at that breakpoint. So at that breakpoint, this had to go to the top, the content. So we're just going to set this order to 1. So I'm going to go into the layout and change the order to 1. Of course, this is order 0. So rather, I'll probably just change that 1 to 1 instead, since yep. So I'll change that 1 to 1. This is 0, so I'm going to save it, and yep, so that should come first. And so that's it. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, please hit the like button. Hit the like button. Don't just watch and go. Hit the like button and then subscribe. Or if you don't want to subscribe, you can just hit the notification bell so that if I have any new video, you'll be notified. And also check out the videos that will be showing mastering layout techniques in Oxygen Builder. It's going to teach you a lot more about mastering techniques. We're supposed to make this background a bit lighter, so I'm just going to go in to effect opacity and just bring it down a little bit, maybe 0.5, 0.6. Yeah, so that helps. Anyway, yep, that works. All right, have a great day. I hope you had fun.